And I now give the floor to Ms. Carmen G. Cantor.
Can you hear me? Thank you, Madam President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of Assistant Secretary General Natalia German, Executive Director of the Counter-Terrorism Committee Executive Directorate, seated, who is unable to be with us today. Thank you for the opportunity to brief the Security Council on the 23rd report of the Secretary General on the threat posed by Daesh to international peace and security, and on United Nations efforts to support member states in countering the threat. I thank Ms. Irina Niyazverdieva and the United Nations Office of Counter-Terrorism, the Analytical Support and Sanctions Monitoring Team, and all our United Nations partners for their collaboration on this report. Madam President, over the past 6 months, Daesh and its affiliates have remained resilient and adaptive despite sustained counterterrorism pressure. The challenge remains global in scope. Africa continues to bear a disproportionate share of its impact, while developments in Iraq and the Syrian Arab Republic underscore the continuing need for vigilance. Humanitarian challenges remain significant. The closure of Al-Hol camp represented a major development. It served to highlight with even more urgency now the complexity of addressing the situation of former Daesh affiliates and their accompanying family members. Developing effective prosecution, rehabilitation, and reintegration measures that are age and gender sensitive remain far from resolved. Addressing this challenge will require sustained international engagement, adequate resources, and compliance with international human rights law, while remaining attentive to the needs of victims of terrorism. The threat landscape is also being reshaped by new and emerging technologies. Terrorist groups continue to exploit social media platforms, encrypted messaging applications, gaming ecosystems, and artificial intelligence-enabled tools to disseminate propaganda, recruit supporters, raise funds, and enhance their operational capabilities. Propaganda is no longer only about shaping narratives. It has become an operational enabler that helps terrorist groups recruit supporters, mobilize resources, and extend their reach across borders. Digital platforms are used to facilitate fundraising, recruitment of financial supporters, procurement of resources, and the movement of funds across jurisdictions. There are persistent gaps in addressing the nexus between terrorism and organized crime. Madam President, in response, the United Nations has continued its support to member states in addressing the broader threat posed by Daesh. Over the past 6 months, seated on behalf of the Counter-Terrorism Committee, conducted follow-up assessment visits to Italy, Jamaica, Japan, Tajikistan, and Togo, underlining the regional differences in the threat landscape. 2 findings from CTED's engagement with member states merit the Council's attention. First, the use and weaponization of unmanned aircraft systems, UAS, for terrorist purposes have evolved into a significant operational threat, including in parts of Africa. CTED has worked with UNOCT and other partners to strengthen member states' capacities to assess and manage risk associated with UAS, prevent terrorist access to weapons and related components, and enhance national frameworks to counter the misuse of UAS and improvise explosive devices, IEDs. We continue to promote implementation of the Committee's Abu Dhabi Guiding Principles, which provide member states with practical guidance in this area. Second, stronger information sharing, protection of critical maritime infrastructure, and the integration of maritime security into counterterrorism frameworks remain essential. This includes expanding the use of advanced passenger information, passenger name record, and watch listing systems, strengthening connectivity with international databases, and enhanced cooperation to detect and disrupt terrorist travel and movement, including through the maritime domain. Madam President, local context continues to shape the threat. The activities of Daesh affiliates across parts of Africa remain a matter of significant concern. In April, CTED published a report on civil society perspectives in West Africa, which highlighted terrorist exploitation of weak governance and porous borders and the growing misuse of technologies, including artificial intelligence, UAS, and social media. In our dialogue with member states in the Balkans and Central Europe, we found that terrorist activity is increasingly characterized by decentralized networks and online radicalization to violence. There is increased emphasis on reintegration, prevention, and strengthening social resilience. Hence, we need more adaptive, comprehensive, and context-specific counter-terrorism responses. Madam President, on the use of technology for terrorist purposes, CTED and United Nations Interregional Crime and Justice Research Institute, UNICRI, convened an expert group meeting on technology-facilitated sexual and gender-based violence linked to terrorism. Experts underlined that responses must be human rights compliant and survivor-centered. Together with the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNOCT, and Tech Against Terrorism, CTED concluded its joint project funded through the United Nations Peace and Security Subfund to strengthen national capacities to detect and disrupt the use of information and communication technologies by terrorist organizations in Somalia and neighboring member states. The project produced roadmaps to guide follow-up implementation and support regional responses to counter the growing use of digital technologies by terrorist groups. CTED's recent briefings and expert engagements highlighted two trends of growing concern: the use of online propaganda ecosystems to facilitate terrorist financing and the growing links between terrorism and organized crime, including through illicit revenue-generating activities. To help member states address these threats, CTED continued its close cooperation with the Financial Action Task Force, FATF, supporting efforts to strengthen counterterrorism financing measures. Additionally, we contributed to several FATF reports on emerging terrorism financing risk and vulnerabilities. These trends also featured prominently during United Nations Counter-Terrorism Week in June. CTED, in partnership with UNOCT and other partners, convened several side events to discuss effective responses and good practices. These exchanges highlighted the importance of international cooperation and collective action. Madam President, as the Secretary General's report makes clear, the threat posed by Daesh has not receded. It has dispersed and adapted across contexts. A response confined to one region or to security measures alone will not address the problem. On behalf of CTED, on behalf of the Counterterrorism Committee, CTED will assess how member states implement its Council's resolutions and identify good practices and persistent gaps to inform effective responses. Only through sustained international cooperation and a comprehensive approach can we effectively counter the threat posed by Daesh and its affiliates. Thank you.
And I thank Ms. Cantor for her briefing.